This is going to be the third installment in my depiction of one way things could have played out had Ben Solo never turned to the dark side. So the other two videos will be linked in the description below in case you'd like to go watch them first. But either way, I'm happy to have you all here for this chapter of the story. In the last video, we left off with Luke leading Leia, Rey, and Ben to their new destination, where they would continue their Jedi training to prepare for their next confrontation with Darth Sidious. They needed to go somewhere that could mask their identity, so the Emperor could not detect their massive force presence. Dagobah was the most obvious choice because of its untamed biodiversity and the dark cave which helped hide Yoda years ago. But it was almost too obvious. Too risky. They needed to go somewhere the Sith wouldn't think to look, but also to a place that still possessed an adequate connection to the Force. They would go to Ahch-To, to the very first Jedi Temple. It was the perfect spot. No one had been there for ages, and it held strong connections to the light and dark sides of the Force. It would provide physical and mental challenges, as well as safety for the new Jedi Order to hone their skills. Rey was blown away by the planet from the moment they entered its atmosphere. The harsh, barren desert landscape of Jakku was all she had ever known, so just about anywhere with a couple of trees or a decent pond would have surprised her. But this place was outstanding. Luke and Leia, too, were impressed not only by the place's beauty, but by the energy around it all. The island had a different sort of feel to it. Ben couldn't deny his curiosity about why they had come to this place, but modern civilizations with a more clean metallic look had always appealed to Ben more than uncharted places like this, so it should go without saying that he wasn't too impressed upon arrival. But as he got comfortable and had a chance to explore a little bit, the island quickly grew on him. He had always held great respect and appreciation for creatures that fought to survive, and this place held an abundance of species who were doing just that. In fact, it was never really that he wasn't impressed by it all, so much as it was that he was so intent, so locked in on doing whatever they had come here to do, that nothing else really mattered. The events of the past few days had hit him deep. He was driven now more than ever before to finish what his grandfather had started. Anakin had been well on his way to becoming the wisest, most powerful Jedi ever, and finally bringing balance to the Force once and for all. Ben didn't know too much about Palpatine, but their short encounter was enough for him to realize just how ruthless and dangerous he was. The Emperor needed to be eliminated at all costs, and nobody was going to do it for them. Training began the next morning after everyone had been given a chance to settle in. Leia would take Rey as her apprentice, although the four of them would train together frequently. In order to understand what their bond really meant, Rey and Ben needed to first realize what it even was. They would spend a few days learning about it before being split up for training. Ben was older and far more advanced than Rey, so there was no point in them staying together. Leia and Rey would stay where they were, at the island's highest peak, in the Temple of the Prime Jedi, a place strong with the light side of the Force, to teach her the basics and familiarize Rey with her own power. Luke and Ben would head down the mountain, toward a much darker place. Ben had been trained in the ways of the light his whole life. His skills in that area were nearly complete. It was now time to introduce him to the dark side. This was a dangerous move by his master, but a necessary one if they were to defeat the Emperor. Luke had recognized the flaw in the old ways of the Jedi. They had become so committed to the light that they failed to recognize the true meaning of balance. Luke himself was already well versed in both sides. That was the only reason he survived his recent duel with the Emperor. So this was how he would teach the next generation. They needed to master both sides of the Force, recognizing the light and the dark within them, and learning to harness both of them in unison. Luke would introduce Ben to the subtleties of the Force, and teach him about the dark side, explaining why in order to become a truly balanced Force wielder, he needed to adopt a larger view of the Force. After a few weeks of studying and training, Ben felt confident enough to enter the dark cave. Luke did not come with him. This experience did not require any company. Ben approached the mirror within the cave, not knowing exactly why he was here, but positive that it was important. The instant he touched the mirror, his surroundings began to spin. They shifted so quickly he couldn't even identify any of the places he was seeing. He heard screams of desperation and pain.
Join me unbalanced. The dark side.
The spinning stopped, and he found himself standing before an open tomb. He walked toward it, and saw a beautiful woman lying peacefully with her hands over her seemingly pregnant stomach. He didn't recognize her face, but somehow he knew her. He stood over her, trying to put a name to her face, as he heard a sinister breath from behind him. He had heard that iconic breathing before, in his dreams and when he encountered certain objects on his journey with Luke. Ben turned to face his grandfather, but before he could speak, Vader ignited his lightsaber and attacked. Ben blocked a few swings before suddenly buckling to his knees. He couldn't breathe. It wasn't real. He knew it wasn't real, but somehow he was sure this was the end. His chest began to cave as he heard a voice. He was released and then looked up to see a little boy with blonde hair standing before him. "Are you a Jedi?" the boy asked. Ben was too shaken to reply. The boy frowned and then ran, as his vision had shifted beyond Ben. Ben turned his head to see Vader once again, swinging his saber at his head. But just before the blade struck him, Vader and everything around him was pulled back into the mirror. He looked up to see a strange man, standing in front of the mirror, his arms stretched out as if he himself had halted the vision. He was outlined in a blue silhouette. This wasn't a vision anymore. This was real. Ben didn't know what to say. The man addressed him as if he'd known him his whole life. "Hello, Ben. I've been watching you for a long time. I'm so proud of the man you're becoming." Ben finally spoke. "What was that? Who were those people?" "That was me. The man in the suit, the little boy. It was all me. I needed you to see the dangers that come with the dark side. You will have to master it if you are to finish what I started. But beware, grandson. It can and it will consume you if you aren't careful. You have the power to stop the Emperor. He has foreseen it, but he also thinks your skills could be made to serve him. Be strong, Ben. Be brave, and don't look back. Never look back." The man disappeared, and Ben was left to try and make sense of what just happened. When Ben climbed out of the cave, Luke was no longer there. He decided to head back to his quarters. When he entered the room, he was surprised to see Rey standing before his bed with her back turned to him. She turned around, startled and confused. They spoke at the same time. "What are you doing here?" They came to realize that they weren't actually in the same room. The vision quickly ended, leaving both of them a bit shaken. Luke and Leia explained to their apprentices that their bond was growing stronger and that somehow they could now interact with each other without actually being together. These bonds would continue to happen at unexpected times as they continued their training, eventually strengthening to the point that even their masters were puzzled. And that's going to conclude part 3. For those of you who have made it to this point in the video, I want you to know that I really do appreciate your support. I'll continue to pursue this story if I know that it's something you all want to see. So thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you, always.